So Heather, thanks for joining us today to discuss the financial stress and impact that the sandwich generation is feeling and providing our audience with some tips and tools for overcoming the overwhelm. So Heather, just to get things started off, what are the financial concerns your clients and people that come to you for help, what are they experiencing as it relates to the sandwich generation and the overwhelm? I guess the question is, what keeps them up at night?
Yeah, it's a very diverse group now. Like really, there's the boomers, which is what we're focusing on, but it's actually moving now into, Gen Xers. And,
Sure.
They have a lot of concerns about both their aging parents and their adult children, because that's where the sandwich comes in. You're kind of sandwiched between the two and dealing with all of that plus your own situation as well. So it's really overwhelming. So some of the concerns are, how do I help my aging parents and adult children without it affecting my lifestyle, my retirement job and financial situation? And where do I even start? Like what government benefits are available and, available to them, available to, you as an individual, things like were my parents going to have to downsize their home? Can they do that? Where do they move? And
Sure.
Peg's going to talk a bit about that. Or do they even move in with me?
Sure.
That's kind of a concern. And is that possible?
Yeah.
What options are there to bridge that gap?
Sure.
Reverse mortgages, things like that. Does that make sense?
Sure.
And then things that, we're all concerned about future healthcare costs.
Sure.
How is that going to impact
Sure.
them, keep them up at night? And then when you go to the adult children, can they help their kids buy a house? Will their kids ever be able to move out? And maybe they will
Sure.
be moving back with them.
Sure.
And what resources are available and what does their retirement look like? So, it's a three-pronged challenge really to
Sure.
deal with all of that. And I
Sure.
think it's keeping a lot of people up at night.
Yeah, sure. So that's a big impact on their finances, their lifestyle, and their retirement and their confidence. How is that impacting, the sandwich generation?
Well, I think that, it's not only financial, but it's, the time challenge, what support do you have and confidence and overwhelm and just, that overwhelmed feeling. And, I know that Haley's going to speak to that and she's, going to help people deal with that. But, they're concerned about, how is it going to impact their finances?
Sure.
Will they look after their parents? And we also have a bit of a societal obligation, do we have to look after our parents and what are the emotional implications if we don't? And,
Sure.
What about looking after our kids? Some people feel like, at 18, it's time for the kids to move on, but
Sure.
we're not, times have changed. So, it's impacting their finances.
Well, housing is not as affordable as it was, 10 years ago. And it's,
right.
It's a necessity now. Okay.
Well, and it's also the other, the time implications, like driving parents to doctor's appointments with a lot of cognitive issues now, understanding, what they can't, because I don't know about you, but, when my mom comes back from the doctor, I'll ask her what she said, what they said. And she, first of all, can't remember. And then secondly, she kind of adds her own twist to it and makes it all up. So, I think it's a lot of that overwhelm and just, not understanding what options are available, to them. There's so many different competing needs and, COVID didn't help, rising housing prices, interest rates, stock market declines, less government support. There's changing rules with, retirement homes and long-term care and, people are just really stressed and overwhelmed and what used to work in the past isn't really working. So it's, dealing with, a lot of, as well that, that crossover, like the parent, being now the child or parenting your parent.
Sure.
So yeah, it's, impacting them financially and also, with kind of the Gen X that are potentially helping adult parents, job, loss is potential because of time and, and with COVID, people are kind of deciding, do they still want to work, and how is that going to impact? So there's so many competing objectives and things that are impacting people. It's just very challenging and stressful times for a lot of people.
Yeah, and that brings up a good question too, is, where if you're feeling overwhelmed and you're a caregiver of your parents and your children, like where do you start? That's you got to get over the hump somehow. And, what do you do?
Well, and that's the thing. And the media is does a great job of, giving us all that doom and gloom, but, there really are solutions, and it's actually pretty straightforward when, you work with someone that, has the knowledge and understanding. And I think that's the key, is you don't have to do it alone.
Sure.
And, to start, it's, I kind of tell my clients is, retirement used to be where you worked at a job that you didn't like, and then you retired to, doing things that you did like.
Sure.
But we're in a different time. People, some of my clients are choosing to go back to work, not because of the financial stress, but because they actually want to. They need to get that interaction with people again. There's always solutions, and it's really just beginning with, where you are today, where do you want to be, and then what resources are out there to help you. And it's really just getting the right information, because, let's face it, you can Google anything.
Sure.
But, I think even though there's videos on how to do your own heart surgery, I don't think we would do that.
Yeah, true.
So it's, really just understanding who can help you, working with someone that you trust that understands your situation.
Sure.
And, there's actually lots of support, government support, and there's also different strategies. So, one of the strategies I was just using for a client, and it's a bit of a, unique, because we're in an environment where interest rates for some things, are high, which is great. So, for one client, they were, their husband passed away, and they realized that they don't have enough income now to support their lifestyle. So they want to go into a certain community, retirement community, but there's a 2-year waiting list. So how do they transition that 2 years? So what we did is we did a reverse mortgage so that they paid off some of the debt they had. And then we used some of that money to purchase an annuity, which gave them an additional $1,000 a month. So their bills now are reduced because they don't have the cost. The reverse mortgage is paid off about, $1,000 a month in debt payments. The annuity has increased their income by $1,000 a month. So now they have $2,000 a month. That, to support that. And it's, a 3-year time frame we're looking at. So potentially 2 to 3 years. So there's still a lot of equity in the property. And then once they sell their home, they're going to have that extra cash flow. But it's just looking at, what solution works for each individual, and, figuring out a plan and the resources available.
And to your point before, and we've talked about this before, is, like taking into account like future medical and health expenses. Like if both parents are living together in a retirement home now, or potentially moving into one, what happens if, they have to separate because one of the spouses has to go into assisted living and the other is still in the independent living, or dementia care, and then all of a sudden the costs increase so much more. And
there's solutions for that too. I mean, you could look at a reverse mortgage if that makes sense, or you could also look at a separation. So there's something called involuntary separation, where you can separate as a couple, separate your finances, so only one is looked at for income, and that may actually give you, for the retirement income requirements, some extra support, because now it's based on one income instead of a family income.
Right. Yes. So Heather, how do you assist your clients and anybody that comes to you for advice to deal with the overwhelm that they're feeling?
Yeah, it's really just looking at their situation. As a fee for service planner, I don't sell any product, and it's really just looking at, what government resources are available. What private solutions do they have? Like I said, the potential reverse mortgage. There's
Right.
also a couple different health programs. So unfortunately, the insurance industry realized that long-term care insurance was very valuable, and anyone who has a long-term care policy, don't get rid of it because you can't
Sure.
replace it. And what that does is it helps pay for your long-term care if you have any issues with activities of daily living.
Oh,
But there
okay.
is a couple plans that, give you something called My Dignity, which is a plan that gives you sort of a stopgap for a couple of years to help
Right.
you have, resources come into your home.
Sure.
There's also, the government benefits like CCAC, there's disability tax credits, there's, but really what I do is, look at where they are and based on their situation and resources, how do we, look at options that that work for them.
Right. And you mentioned too, when we were chatting earlier, that there's a government benefit too if you want to renovate your house for for taking care of family members, like an extended family situation.
Yeah, there's it's called the generational renovation tax credits. You can actually, again, if there's that stopgap where you've got 1 or 2 years where you need to bring a family member in, you can do renovations and get a tax credit and actually like dollars back. So,
right. Right.
So there's all kinds of, and then there's the caregiver credit and,
Yeah.
there's all kinds of credits. And then, on the other side, if you want to help your kids, there's, the RSP homebuyer plan, if you want to help them buy property. And there's also the new, tax savings plan, the homebuyer savings plan.
Okay. Okay.
Which you can actually use both of those.
Right.
So, that's one way that, sometimes I'm talking about grandparents and they want to leave a legacy for their kids. Well, that's something they can contribute to now to help them buy property.
Yeah, what a great idea. And that's the benefit of going to getting an expert to help you is that, you can put these things in place. And even if they're not something you're going to do right now, at least you can have a plan for how you're going to roll that out in the future. And
there's so many programs that people, I have to every year, look at the new programs and see what's available to make sure that, the strategies and tips are available to my clients.
Sure. Is there specific resources that are available to assist, people that are overwhelmed, with their finances? They're part of the sandwich generation. Like, where can they go to start, even getting self-help or getting educated themselves? Because it's all the process of getting educated, right? And that's your option. Yeah.
There's all kinds of different, options. I mean, I have, a few different guides that I can provide people. I have like a caregiver guide. I have a tax credit guide. I have, how do you help your kids buy a home? So if anyone wants any of those resources, they can definitely contact me.
Okay.
Or if they want to set up, I have a 30-minute complimentary strategy session.
Awesome.
They could, the link, it's www.talkwithheatherh.com.
Okay.
And
Awesome.
then that'll bring them right to my calendar.
Okay.
Or they can call.
We'll post that link out there with your contact information as well, so that anybody that is overwhelmed by their finances and they're part of the sandwich generation, or if they're baby boomers, or anybody else that is overwhelmed with their finances and they need help. Heather is a great resource. She helped me in the past with so many of my clients and come up with some very creative solutions. So thank you, Heather. Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I think, the closing point would be you don't have to do it alone. Just, there's lots of resources out there and, there's people willing to help you, and it's just working with someone that you can trust.
Yeah. Awesome, Heather. Good. Well, we'll join you again in the group discussion, and thanks very much. Okay. And